Hi folks, my name is Joe Adams. Some of y'all might recognize me, but some of you may not. I grew up right here in Cuero, Texas, and I have been in and around the cow-calf business for a long time. One thing about our part of the world is the economic impact that agriculture has on basically the crossroads of Texas. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Each month, we're going to go try to different counties. We're going to try to meet as many people as we can. We're going to try to be bringing y'all some interesting stuff. This first episode, we're going to meet with Blake Dunn and Miss Patricia Mir. We're going to learn about a little bit of the cattle industry in DeWitt County. We hope you enjoy it. See you soon.
Welcome to Let's Grow Texas Ag, showcasing unique farm and ranch stories of the South Texas coastal plains. First-hand knowledge with special guests presented by our very own and well-known host, Joe Adams. Pull up a chair and enjoy as we share some of the heritage and insightful stories that have made us proud Texans. Let's Grow Texas Ag, sponsored by Shoppa's Farm Supply.
Welcome back, folks, and I tell you, I think it's something pretty special when you get to sit up underneath the shade of an oak tree that's seen a lot of full moons. But I think it's really specialer than that is to be sitting there with my good friend, Mr. Blake Dunn, out here at his beautiful home in Myersville, Texas, where him and his wife, Miss Kathy, have. You got a beautiful house up there, man.
Thank you.
That's really a neat deal. You know, Blake, sitting there talking about the cattle industry and everything in DeWitt County, and I had the pleasure of working for J. Carter Thomas and Miss Ann Fryer Thomas ever since 1979. They've been in the cattle industry forever, so I learned a tremendous amount about all of that. But in tying everything together in the cattle industry in DeWitt County and how important it is, your story, coming from your dad, Mr. Pat, and your great-grandpa, Mr. Tip Alexander, you know, Thornton Chisholm, hired by Crockett Cardwell in 1866, right after a year after the Civil War was over, found a need for meat up north, and he hired Thornton Chisholm to take the first cattle drive to St. Joe, Missouri. Your dad, being very much a storyteller himself, I know he had to share some stories with you about something along that came from his grandpa. Do you remember any of those?
Yeah, I remember quite a few of the stories. Tried to retain them all, and I didn't have his memory, unfortunately. But yeah, I guess him and my great-grandfather and his little brother went.
Wow.
And his little brother was named Green.
Do you remember how old your great-grandpa was?
I think he was 21.
21.
And his brother would have been
19.
19.
Something like that. But you know, probably never been out of DeWitt County. And then all of a sudden, Crockett Cardwell finances a cattle drive in an effort to get meat to northern markets. And you know, that's one thing that after the Civil War, Texas, they didn't have no money. Mm-hmm. But they had a lot of the old cattle that were derivatives, the old Spanish Andalusian cattle, the Texas Longhorns. A lot of those cattle just all the way to the Wild Horse Desert down south, coming this way. But it's a little different back then.
Yeah.
I imagine when they left Cardwell Flats out there, how long did it take them to get there?
7 or 8 months.
7 or 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
No news, no telephone, no nothing. They just on the trail. They're just traveling up there, headed to St. Joe, Missouri, trying to find a rail yard. And then when you get up there, it ain't what you thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. So you're having to pay your hands and doing all this. So, and I guess that's kind of the spirit of that. And Thornton Chisholm, he gets up there and he says, I'm not going to sell them for that. Mm-hmm. We'll get out of here, we'll graze them.
Yeah.
We're not going to do it. So whoever wants to stay with me, I'll keep paying you. We'll wait for the market to get better. And I guess it did, because they come back to Texas or come back to Cuero,
yeah,
with having completed their job and got the cattle sold.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing that the hardships they went through. It's hard to imagine. He said the whole bunch of them caught some kind of illness, and they all ran real high fever for days, and they just laid around, and that's when his brother died. And he got over it and survived, but all his teeth fell out
Wow.
from that high fever. And he never had teeth the rest of his life. And my daddy said he could eat any steak you could eat.
Yeah, that's something else.
He said the storms, bad storms up in that plains country, those storms would come up, tornadoes and lightning coming to the ground. And he said they were all afraid of anything metal.
Yeah.
They'd take their belt buckles and their guns, and they'd put them off over there, and they'd lay on the ground, turn the horses loose, and put the saddle over their back and lay as flat as they could lay on the ground till it passed. There's nowhere to go.
If you had one question that you could ask your great-grandpa, Tip Alexander, what would it be?
I guess I ought to ask him why he didn't buy more land.
When it was cheap.
When it was, they owned 1,200 acres right there on the north end of Cuero before Cuero was there.
Yeah.
They settled there. That was my great-grandmother's family that came from Missouri. And they settled there in 1846. And they had 1,200 acres there at one time. And Daddy's shown me some deeds and stuff where they sold off land for $2 an acre.
Wow.
And I said, why would they do that? And he said, they hungry. They had any money.
It's kind of amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
We got it made pretty easy, don't we?
Yeah, we really do.
We're in a good year right now. We're sitting out here at a beautiful place, y'all's beautiful ranch. And it's a beautiful spring day, and it all looks good right now. Where do you see it going from here?
I worry about the age of the average cowman now, which is in the 60s. And the price of doing business, the price of land, it's just pretty tough for a young man to get into the cattle business.
It's, and you say the price of land, and it's kind of a, years ago, and working with Miss Thomas for all those years, and the Friar Ranch being put together, and like a lot of ranches or a lot of people that had larger land holdings, they came along at a period of time back in the early 1900s up into the 1940s, when I guess the first time that I read about it was when the old Sun Oil Field came in out there off Ford Tran Road. Exactly. On that old Sager country. So all the land back in there, a lot of people were land rich and money poor.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of places that were traded back then for, $30, $35 an acre.
Or less.
Yeah. And so, at that rate, I could probably buy an acre or two this morning.
Yeah.
But back in those days, that was a lot of money. And then, then here comes the oil industry, and things begin to change and all that kind of stuff. But at the price of land today, there's absolutely no way that a young person could say, I'm going to go out and buy a ranch, and I'm going to ranch it and make payments and make a living out of it. Yeah, and I think, you talk about the trials and tribulations of being in the cattle industry and the ups and downs and the pros and cons and all that. And I think if you had one thing to say to the viewers that are watching this, if they wanted to help or they wanted to become a part of something, what would you tell them?
Eat more beef.
Hey, that's not a bad idea. Go down there and eat more beef. That's all it takes, because that's pretty much what it's all about. All right, folks, don't go nowhere. We got Miss Patricia Mir coming up right after these breaks. See you in a minute. Welcome back, folks. Joe Adams again. Up here, we have the privilege of being up here at the Chisholm Trail Heritage Museum, second floor at the Friar Thomas Community Rooms, in the Hamilton Room, and I have my good friend up here, Miss Patricia Mir here. Miss Patricia, it is absolutely wonderful to see you. I'm glad you carved out a little time to visit with us.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, I tell you, folks, the interesting thing about Miss Patricia, and as y'all heard in Blake Dunn's story a while ago, these guys are first cousins, and y'all have y'all have a family tree that goes back, is rooted in Texas history like a lot of families don't have. And so your great-great-grandpa, Tip Alexander, and Blake's great-great-grandpa, Tip Alexander, same feller. Y'all enjoyed growing up with all of that history in you. I'll tell you one thing, it's the Chisholm Trail. It started right here. So what's some of your memories of growing up on the ranch?
I actually grew up in San Antonio, but I spent all my holidays and all my summers down here with my grandparents and my great uncle, riding horses and feeding bottles to orphan animals.
Yeah, just ranch life.
Just regular ranch life.
And interesting enough, you go back and doing a little research and reading of y'all's family and what have you. Dr. Robert Peoples, who came from, I think, South Carolina?
Yes.
In like 1820?
1820.
So what's the story there?
He was our first Peebles ancestor that came to Texas, and he settled first down in the Fort Bend area, but later became acquainted with Stephen F. Austin and his colonists, and he ended up, as a medical doctor, treating Stephen F. Austin and witnessing his, I think, the codicil to Austin's will, but he also treated the colonists and a number of the men who perished at the Alamo, our Alamo heroes.
Wow, that is so cool. I don't see how in the world you could get any more entangled in Texas history than having ancestors that treated Stephen F. Austin and the colonists. That to me is just such a neat story, and it's very amazing to me.
Well, and there's some interesting letters from Dr. Robert Peebles back to Stephen F. Austin that are up in the Briscoe Library. Very poignant.
When did he move to DeWitt County from Fort Bend County?
I'm not sure when exactly he moved up this way. I would guess it was in the 1840s, maybe 1845.
1845, something like that. So he's been here a while and bought some of the country that y'all still ranch today.
Yes, yes.
You see, that's just amazing, because being a steward of the land and a steward of your family that protect the ranching heritage that you grew up in, that is just so neat to me. You know, and I had the pleasure of growing up under Miss Thomas, and that, so I understand what that means to a person, but it's so neat that you keep it going.
Well, it reminds me of my family members, and the land itself was important to them, and so it became very important to me.
Well, it's very important, and it means so much. You know, you've got the same place that they ranched years and years ago, and you're out there ranching. You're raising registered Angus cattle now, and got all kinds of that kind of stuff going on. So, and speaking of Angus cattle, I think your great grandpa or your grandpa,
my grandfather,
your
Blake
grandfather,
Alexander.
Blake Alexander,
Right.
had some. He started that Angus deal down here, didn't he?
Right. We had Herefords down here in DeWitt County. Herefords were very popular, but in our part of the county, they had difficulties, and so he brought in black Angus cattle, which were not affected by a certain plant, and so they just took off from there.
Is that the wild onion? That wild onion. I've always heard of that out there in that Cheapside
It's
area.
a fungus that grows on the rain lily after it dies,
Yeah.
and deer can get it in addition to livestock.
Interesting stuff. So if you can't raise Hereford cattle, we're gonna get Angus cattle, and you've stayed with it.
Yes.
And what all kind of stuff have you brought into the ranching program out there? I know that you're pretty proactive. You're doing some things to maximize what you can do out there on the ranch. What are some of the stuff you're doing?
Well, I have switched from windmills to solar water wells, and I use a lot of intensive rotational grazing practices, which help the soil and the land and ultimately the grass. And I do non-chemical brush control with a huge herd of Kiko goats that love Wasatch brush.
See, now, I'm going to tell you something. That, to me, that is really cool, because and here again, and I'll refer to Miss Thomas again on this deal, because she was very had that mindset as well. She did not like putting chemicals out on the ground. She said, all of that stuff's got to go to a watershed somewhere.
Right.
It's going somewhere. And so you brought in brush control. We tried to do that years ago. We went down to the Welder Wildlife Refuge for a meeting that Joe Pascal had down there, and we were going to get in the goat business out there east of Quirrell. And we were going to use it to control weesats and shinnery oak. And so we did a trial. We bought a trailer full of goats, and we let them out there at the camp. And I'm glad we took a picture of them, because
You
that's
never
the
saw
last
them
we
again.
saw them.
Well, goats are different than cattle.
Yeah.
And have peculiar difficulties, but they're well worth it. They eat all the noxious plants like poison ivy and poison oak and poison sumac and things that you don't want, but you don't have to poison them. You can just let the goats eat them.
How long have you been doing that?
About 20 years.
That is really, that's really neat. And evidently it's working for you.
It's working, and you can tell the part of the ranch where the goats migrate more often has just minimal brush at all.
That is so
So it's
cool.
fun.
Yeah, that's fun, and you get a cash crop.
Got a cash crop out of the goats, and they're very entertaining.
They'll climb on anything, won't they?
Yes, they'll get on your car in a heartbeat.
All right, folks, get you some cold drink, get you a soft seat. Don't go nowhere. We're going to take a short break. We'll see you back in just a few seconds.
Did you know? Despite having a relatively small population of approximately 20,000, DeWitt County boasts an impressive estimated value of $84 million in agricultural and related products.
Welcome back, folks, to Let's Grow Tex Ag. Once again, we're up here at the Chisholm Trail Heritage Museum in Quirrell, Texas, with our good friend, Miss Patricia Mir. Miss Patricia, what are your thoughts on the land and cattle business as far as the oil companies and the solar farms? Not necessarily the solar farm, the solar that you have on your pumps, but like there's a big push for taking wholesale acreage, big places, and just wholesale clearing them and putting up these solar panels and electricity. What do you think about all that?
Well, I don't like that from the standpoint of, I wish that we would use non-productive land for solar farms and save productive agricultural land for agricultural production. Because as our cities grow, cities were all founded next to a good water source and on really good soil. Well, we're covering up our good soil with concrete and buildings, and pretty soon we won't have land to farm and raise livestock on.
You know, and I think you bring up a very valid point. It could be some type of solar deal, because I do think that eventually there is a place for it. I think you'd have to be a little bit naive to not think that one of these days, and it's maybe not in our lifetimes, or our kids' lifetimes, or maybe even our grandkids' lifetime, but I think that the hydrocarbon, the fossil fuels, sooner or later are probably going to play out. So I think that we need to be a little bit proactive for other sources, for sure. But boy, I tell you what, I couldn't agree with you more. When you go out there and see some old ranching country or farming country or whatever that is turned into solar farms or windmill farms or whatever, it's kind of like, wow.
Well, we won't need any electricity if we don't have food. We just won't.
Well, you know what? That's a pretty good point right there.
And we need to. I wish that there was a greater interest in protecting our farms and ranches from various types of threats, because it is our food supply.
And most of that has got to be coming up through the generation. It's a generational thing, you know, to where you take it very serious, I take it very serious. What do we need to do to make sure that young people continue to do that?
I think young people need to understand that agriculture and ranching offers a quality of life that they cannot have in the city. You know, to be able to work out of doors and enjoy the bounty of Mother Nature, to watch the cycle of life with livestock every year, is just precious.
It's very well said, because it is.
It's just very precious. And I've worked in offices before, and I couldn't wait to get back to the country. And I would think that young people need to try working in agriculture and see if they don't get the bug.
You know, that's a very good thought. You've been very
I've enjoyed
informative.
it.
We've
Thank
had a
you,
great
Joe.
time with you. Miss Patricia Mir from the Chisholm Trail Heritage Museum right here in DeWitt County, Texas, right here in Cuero. And I want you to take an opportunity to come up here to see the museum, walk out there in the People's Park, because there's a lot of history here that coincide with Miss Patricia's stories. We'll be right back. Don't go nowhere. See you in a few seconds.
Maybe you know someone that should be highlighted on our program. Let us know. Send your story ideas to crossroadstoday.com/ag.
Folks, I know that everybody out there knows that we owe a lot of thanks to a lot of different folks. And I think that there's one group of individuals, the men and women that are in our armed services, the veterans, the people that are serving today so we can enjoy the freedoms that we have over here. They deserve a big pat on the back and a big old thank you. And the first responders, the people that just come a running, no questions asked. If you get a chance, tell them thank you. We appreciate what you guys do, and we'll see you soon.
You've been watching Let's Grow Texas Ag. Special stories focused on the farmers, ranchers, and those who work in our agricultural industries in South Texas. Sponsored by Shoppa's Farm Supply. Visit our website for more information and program schedules. You can stream Let's Grow Texas Ag on Crossroads Today Plus, Zeme, or YouTube.